I wanted to give them more time. That is what I told myself in the beginning. Not forever, not immortality, not the kind of eternity rich people dream about when they start to feel their hands getting old. Just time, a little more time to heal, a little more time to say the thing you waited too long to say, a little more time to sit beside someone you love while morning light comes slowly through the window. That was all I wanted, at least. That is what I remember wanting. The first recording was made on a Thursday night inside Research Wing 5 of NexusCore. It was raining. I remember that clearly because the rain sounded almost human against the glass. Not loud, not violent, just slow, soft tapping, like fingers asking to be let in. The lab was almost empty. Concrete walls, polished floor, black glass between rooms, white light above me, too clean to feel natural. Everything at NexusCore looked expensive in a way that made it seem untouched by life. No dust in the corners, no fingerprints on the doors, no warmth left in the furniture. Even the air felt processed, cold, dry, with that faint metallic taste that stayed on your tongue after too many hours near the equipment. I was sitting alone at my desk, wearing the same dark coat I had worn outside. I had forgotten to take it off. The fabric was still damp at the shoulders, and every time I moved, I felt the cold weight of it against my skin. My wrists were bare. My hands were tired. There was a thin red mark across one finger, where I had been holding a pen too tightly for too long. Small things stay with you. The smell of old coffee, the pressure of wet fabric, the quiet burn behind your eyes when you have not slept, the way your own breathing sounds, when you finally realize no one else is in the room. I should have gone home. Nick had told me to go home. He stood in the doorway just after midnight, one hand on the frame, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his hair still damp from the rain. Dr. Nick Richards, my colleague, my closest friend, the one person at NexusCore who still looked at people before he looked at data, and the man I loved. He did not say it directly that night. He rarely did when he was afraid. Nick had a way of becoming gentle around danger, as if speaking softly could keep the world from breaking. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Maxine, you're shaking." I told him I was cold. That was not completely a lie. The lab was always cold after midnight. The concrete kept the temperature in its bones. You could feel it rising from the floor, through the soles of your shoes, up into the calves, the knees, the hips. A slow, patient cold, the kind that does not touch you all at once. It waits. It enters where you are already weak. Nick crossed the room and placed a paper cup beside my keyboard. Tea, not a coffee. He always made tea when he thought I was near collapse. It was one of the few soft rituals left in that building. The cup warmed my fingers when I touched it. For a second, that small warmth almost hurt. "You need to sleep," he said. I remember looking at the monitor instead of at him. There were numbers moving across the screen, biological age markers, cellular decay curves, neural retention indices, donor compatibility estimates that were not supposed to exist yet. We were still calling them simulations. That was another lie. NexusCore had many words for lies: preliminary, voluntary, therapeutic, continuance. The continuance program was not public then, not officially. Evelyn Voss had already prepared the contracts, of course. She had prepared the press language, the investor briefings, the medical ethics documents, the legal shields. Evelyn prepared everything before anyone else admitted there was something to prepare. But in the lab, at night, we still pretended we were scientists, not architects of a market, not witnesses, not accomplices, scientists. Nick leaned over the back of my chair. I could smell rain in his coat, cold air, wool, a trace of the soap he used at home. Home. That word felt strange inside NexusCore. It felt almost inappropriate. He looked at the data, and I felt his body become still. Not tense exactly. Still. The way a person becomes still when they hear a sound in the house at night and do not yet know which room it came from. Max, he said. Only he called me that. Never in meetings, never in front of Evelyn. Only when we were alone, or when he needed me to hear the part of him that was not a doctor. Max, this is not just extension. I did not answer. He pointed to a cluster of readings on the lower left side of the screen. Memory resonance, emotional carryover, cross-subjective recall. Words we had invented because the truth was too ugly to put into the report. He said, something is transferring with the lifespan markers. I told him it was noise. I said the system was reading stress residue, trauma signatures, peripheral neural echoes. Nothing stable, nothing meaningful. I sounded very calm. That is how I know I was already afraid. Nick took his hand off the back of my chair. The absence of his touch changed the room. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone else would have noticed, but I noticed. The space behind me felt wider, colder. I wanted to turn around, but I did not. He said, "You don't believe that." I kept looking at the numbers. Outside, the rain moved down the glass in thin silver lines. The city beyond the window was blurred into soft lights and black shapes, as if the world had been painted behind water. Somewhere far below us, in the lower levels, the building made a sound. A low mechanical shift, not loud, just enough. The floor carried it up through the chair into my spine. Nick heard it too. "Sweet Zero?" he asked. I said nothing. There are moments in your life when silence becomes a decision. That was one of mine. Sweet Zero was beneath us, 2 floors down, behind doors that did not open with standard clearance. A room without windows. A room with concrete walls thicker than the rest of the building. A room NexusCore had designed for procedures they did not want the building to remember. I had seen it once during construction. Empty then. Just a chair in the center. Black glass on one side. A white line embedded in the floor. No visible machine. No exposed equipment. Nothing dramatic. That was what made it worse. People imagine evil as something with teeth. Most of the time, evil looks like a clean room and a consent form. Nick walked to the window. His reflection appeared in the glass beside the rain. Pale face, dark eyes, tired mouth. He looked older in the reflection than he did in life. Or maybe I only remember it that way because I know what came later. He said, "Evelyn is moving too fast." I almost smiled. Everyone moved too slowly for Evelyn Voss. She had a way of entering a room before the door opened. Not literally, not like a ghost, but her presence arrived first. People straightened, conversations thinned, hands moved away from pockets, screens were minimized. Even the air seemed to make space for her. Evelyn did not raise her voice. She never needed to. She could make a person feel replaceable with 3 quiet words and a look toward the door. Earlier that evening, she had stood exactly where Nick was standing now, in front of the same rain-streaked glass. wearing a charcoal suit that did not wrinkle and a silver watch that made no sound. She had looked at the city below us and said, "People are not afraid of death, Dr. Vale. They're afraid of running out of options." I remember the way she said options, softly, almost kindly, as if she were offering the world a blanket instead of a leash. I told her the continuance model was not ready. She said, "Nothing that changes civilization is ever ready." I told her the early data suggested transfer artifacts. She said, "Then refine the language, not the procedure." Language, that was Evelyn. If a wound looked unacceptable, she changed the name of the wound. If a theft sounded too violent, she called it a transfer. If a desperate man sold 8 years of his future to pay for his wife's treatment, she called it a voluntary term yield. I did not know about Elias Wagner yet. Not then, not his face, not his daughter, not the way his hands would rest open on the chair, as if he still believed the world might be fair to him if he did not resist it. But Evelyn knew. Of course she knew. She always knew the names. Before the rest of us knew there would be names. Nick turned from the window. "Maxine," he said, "tell me they are not running a human trial tonight." I heard the rain. I heard the soft hum of the lights. I heard my own pulse in the side of my throat. I did not hear myself answer. Maybe I did not. Maybe I only looked at the screen. There was a file open beneath a data model. Small, almost hidden. A simple approval chain with timestamps, signatures, biometric consent markers, legal review, medical authorization. At the top of the file was the NexusCore seal. Below it, in clean white letters, the words, "Voluntary continuance transfer." There's a particular kind of nausea that does not rise from the stomach. It starts in the hands. The fingertips go slightly numb. The skin along the arms tightens. The mouth becomes dry, but the body forgets how to swallow. You can still think. That is the cruel part. You can still read. You can still understand. Every word in front of you. Donor eligibility confirmed. Recipient clearance pending. Term yield 8 years. Location Suite 0. Nick stepped closer. I closed the file too late. He had seen enough. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The quiet between us was not empty. It was full of every conversation we should have had weeks earlier, every warning he had given me, every time I had told him I could control it, every time I had believed that being brilliant made me less responsible. Nick's voice changed when he finally spoke. It became smaller, not weaker, more human. "Who is the donor?" I shook my head. I do not know why. Maybe because if I did not say the name, the man would stay theoretical. A donor class, a subject category, a point on a chart, something clean enough to survive a meeting. Nick reached past me and opened the file again. I let him. His hand moved carefully over the keyboard. He did not touch me, not even by accident. That hurt more than I expected. The file expanded. Name, Elias Wagner. Age, 33. Occupation, municipal maintenance technician. Marital status, married. Dependent child, 1. Medical debt status, critical. Spousal treatment authorization, pending continuance collateral approval. Nick read the lines once, then again. His face did not change much, but I saw the color leave his mouth. "They're using his wife," he said. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say it was more complicated, that the program was voluntary, that the contracts were legal, that Elias had been evaluated, that he had signed, that he knew the terms, but there are sentences that become disgusting before they leave your mouth. So I said nothing. Nick looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time that night, I felt afraid of him. Not because he would hurt me, because he still believed there was a version of me who would stop this. There is nothing more painful than being trusted by someone who has not yet seen what you allowed yourself to become. He said, "We have to shut it down." I whispered, "We can't." The word came out before I could make them stronger. We can't. Not we shouldn't. Not yet. Can't. Nick heard the difference. His eyes moved over my face, searching for the place where the woman he loved had gone. I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to take his hand and press it against my chest and make him feel how fast my heart was beating. I wanted him to know I was not empty. Not yet. I wanted to tell him that fear had been living inside me for weeks, sleeping under my ribs, waking whenever Evelyn said the word future. But I did not move, because movement would have made me real, and if I became real, so would Elias. Nick stepped back. "You signed off on this," he said. "No anger. That would have been easier. Just pain. Quiet pain, the kind that stays polite because it does not know where to go." I looked down at my hand. The red mark from the pen was still there. I had signed 12 documents that day. Research approvals, safety expansions, neural mapping revisions, consent language edits, continuance classification updates. I had told myself they were procedural. That is how systems like NexusCore survive. They make horror procedural. They put it in forms. They divide it into departments. They ask for initials. They ask for compliance. They ask for one small signature at a time. And by the time someone sits in the chair, everyone can say their part was only administrative. Nick said my name again. Maxine. Not Max. Not this time. I looked at him. He had tears in his eyes, but they had not fallen. Nick hated crying in front of glass. He once told me that. He said glass made grief feel observed. I remember thinking, absurdly, that I loved him. There, in the worst moment. While a man 2 floors below us was being prepared to sell 8 years of his life. I looked at Nick and thought, I love you. Human beings are obscene that way. Our hearts do not wait for clean circumstances. The lab phone rang. Just once. A soft, internal chime. Both of us looked at it. The screen on my desk shifted from the file to an incoming executive channel. Evelyn Voss. Nick said, "Don't." But my hand was already moving. The call opened without video. Evelyn rarely used video when she wanted control. Voice was enough. Less information, more pressure. "Dr. Vale," she said. Her voice was warm in the way expensive hotel rooms are warm, perfectly adjusted, without comfort. I said, "Evelyn?" Nick stood very still. If Evelyn knew he was there, she gave no sign. "The board has approved acceleration," she said. "Suite 0 is ready." The rain dragged itself down the window. Slow, silver, endless. I could hear my own breathing now. Too shallow, too close, I said. The transfer artifacts are unresolved. Evelyn paused, not because she was considering the objection, because she wanted me to hear how little it moved her. "Then we document them. Evelyn, we may be transferring memory residue, emotional continuity, possibly future-associated recall." "Possibly," she said. "One donor has a child. Many donors have children." That sentence changed something in me. Not enough, but something. Nick moved beside me as if he might speak, but I lifted one hand without looking at him. "Please," Not yet, Evelyn continued. Elias Wagner has entered a legal agreement. His wife's treatment will be authorized upon successful completion. He has been informed of all recognized risks. Recognized. That word. So clean, so cowardly. I said, he cannot consent to risks we do not understand. Evelyn's voice softened. That was when she was most dangerous. Maxine, the dying do not wait for our comfort. His wife needs treatment. He has something of value. We have the means to convert that value. This is not cruelty. This is access. Access? Another Nexus word. Nick laughed once under his breath. Not because anything was funny, because the alternative was shouting. Evelyn heard him then. A small silence entered the call. Dr. Richards is with you, she said. I closed my eyes. Nick answered before I could. Yes. Evelyn did not sound surprised. Then, I hope you both understand the significance of tonight. Nick said. I understand exactly what it is. No, Evelyn said. You understand what it costs. That is not the same thing. I opened my eyes. On the monitor, the file refreshed, recipient clearance approved. My skin went cold so quickly it felt wet. Somewhere below us, beyond concrete, beyond locked doors. Elias Wagner was probably sitting in a room with a nurse beside him. Maybe he was thinking about his wife, maybe about his daughter. Maybe he was telling himself 8 years was not so much. People will bargain with almost anything. When someone they love is in pain, that is not weakness. That is the part of us. NexusCore learned how to price, Evelyn said. I need your final confirmation, Dr. Vale. Nick turned toward me. No, he said quietly. Just one word. No, it was not a command. It was a hand reaching for me in the dark. I looked at him, and for 1 second, I saw the life we might have had if we had left that building when he asked me to. A small apartment, bagged coffee, his books on the floor, my coat drying over a chair, rain outside a normal window, morning coming without permission from anyone. It was so close. I could almost feel it. The softness of a bed we had not slept in enough, the warmth of his hand at the back of my neck, the ordinary future, the one people do not know they are lucky to have, until a company like NexusCore finds a way to measure it. Evelyn waited. Nika waited. The building waited. I touched the confirmation key. I did not press it at first. My fingertip rested there, and the plastic felt colder than it should have. I could feel the tiny edge of the key beneath my skin. My hand was shaking now, not much, just enough to make a cursor tremble on the screen. Nick whispered, Max, please. That was the last time he called me Max, before everything changed. I pressed confirm. For a moment, nothing happened. That is how the worst things begin. Quietly, without music, without thunder, without anyone screaming, just one small decision, entering a system built to make it permanent. The screen went white. Then the words appeared. Voluntary continuance transfer approved. Donor, Elias Wagner. Term yield, 8 years. Location, Suite 0. Status, active. Nick turned away from me. I heard his breath shake once. Then he left the room. The door opened. The door closed. Very soft. Very final. I sat alone in the lab, with Evelyn still on the line. She said, You did the right thing. I stared at the words on the screen. Voluntary. Continuance. Approved. My tea had gone cold beside the keyboard. When I picked it up, the paper cup had softened from the heat and damp. It bent slightly under my fingers, almost collapsing. I held it anyway. I needed to feel something fragile. Evelyn said, History will remember this night. I almost answered her. I almost said, History has never been kind to people who speak that way. But I was tired, and Nick was gone, and somewhere beneath me, Elias Wagner was closing his eyes in a concrete room, about to see his daughter older than she had any right to be. So I said nothing. That is the truth of it. Not the version NexusCore archived. Not the version I later told myself. The truth. I said nothing. I watched the status bar move from pending to active. I listened to the rain. I felt the cold concrete under my feet, even through the soles of my shoes. And for the first time, I understood that my invention had never been about defeating death. Death was honest. Death waited at the end. What we had built was worse. We had found a way to reach into the middle of a life and take only the parts that had not happened yet. Evelyn ended the call. The lab went quiet again, but not the same quiet as before. This one had a shape. It sat in the room with me, across from me, inside my coat, under my tongue, between my fingers. I could feel it every time I swallowed. A little piece of the future had just been opened, and it had made a sound. Not like machinery, not like progress, like a door closing somewhere far away. A door Elias Wagner would never open. A door his daughter would one day stand in front of, holding a key, not knowing why the hallway felt so empty. I did not know that yet. Not fully, but some part of me felt it. Some small animal part beneath all the science. The part of the body that knows when a room is wrong. The part that makes the skin rise at the back of the neck. The part that hears silence and understands it is not absence. It is waiting. I sat there until the rain stopped. Then I opened a private recording file. No Nexus header, no classification tag, no legal language, just my voice. Small at first, unsteady, almost too quiet for the microphone. I said, "My name is Maxine Vale." Then I stopped, because for the first time in my life, my own name sounded like evidence. I tried again. "My name is Maxine Vale. I am the lead architect of the continuance program at NexusCore. If this recording is ever found, if anyone ever hears this, then I need you to understand something." My mouth was dry. My throat hurt. I could smell cold tea, rainwater, metal, and the faint electric dust of overheated screens. I could still feel Nick's voice in the room. "Max, please." I kept recording. I thought I was building a treatment. I thought I was giving people time. The monitor behind me changed. I saw the reflection in the dark glass before I turned around. Status update. Suite 0 procedure initiated. I stood slowly. The chair rolled back across the floor with a soft, ugly sound. My legs felt weak, not enough to fall, just enough to remind me that the body knows guilt before the mind is ready to name it. On the screen, beneath Elias Wagner's file, a new line appeared. Extraction sequence stabilized. Emotional carryover detected. Memory artifact probable. I moved closer. The letters blurred, then sharpened. Another line appeared. Subject response. Vocalization. I do not know why I whispered. There was no one in the room, but I whispered anyway. What did he say? The system processed for 3 seconds. 3 seconds can be very long when something human is trapped inside them. Then the transcript loaded. 1 word, a name, his daughter's name. The one I will not say here. The one NexusCore stored before Elias could forget it. I touched the glass of the monitor with 2 fingers. The surface was warm. That surprised me. Everything else was cold. I looked at the recording waveform on my screen, my own voice waiting in blue lines, my breath captured, my silence measured, and I understood something then. Not all of it. Not enough to stop what came next, but enough to know that the machine had already begun taking more than years. It had taken a name and made it data. It had taken a father's fear and made it evidence. It had taken my silence and made it consent. I leaned closer to the microphone. My voice was different when I spoke again. Lower, slower, almost calm. That frightened me most. I gave them the door, I said. NexusCore built the lock. The screen behind me refreshed one final time. Recipient preparation complete. Continuance transfer in progress. Estimated donor term yield, 8 years. Projected recipient extension, 8 years, 7 months, 4 days. I stared at the extra 7 months, the extra 4 days. Even theft had profit margins. I laughed then, not loudly, not because anything was funny. The sound left me before I could stop it. Small, broken, almost breathless. Then I covered my mouth with my hand. My fingers smelled like ink and cold paper. I thought of Nick walking away from me. I thought of Elias in Suite Zero. I thought of Evelyn Voss looking down at the city, already seeing all the ears it could be made to surrender. And I said the sentence that became the beginning of everything. Not to the board, not to Evelyn, not even to Nick. To the microphone, to whoever might one day listen in the dark. I gave them more time, and they learned how to steal the future. The recording continued for another 6 minutes. I did not speak. I only breathed, very slowly, as if I could still make myself human by proving I was alive.